Good morning, everyone. Our rector is a little busy this morning, so he asked that I fill in and provide the introduction for today's forum, which is truly my pleasure, in large part because it was my idea. Yes. I said, we need some civics education, Mike. What can we do about that? And he says, well, let's do a rector's forum on it. And luckily, we know here in our community of faith so many people we can turn to provide us education and wisdom, especially about the political process. So today's forum, changing our State of the Union. The way we change our State of the Union is by getting involved and by taking personal responsibility for what happens both in our state government and our federal government. And one thing that I'm very aware of, and my rapid response team members are aware of this too, as we engage in our weekly actions, is just how many of us are really unclear about the state and federal process of making bills become law. And we also know that many of you are still very unclear about who your elected representatives are. It's been quite often that I have found letters to our congressional representatives that say, "Dear Honorable Anthony Portantino." No, Anthony is not your congressional representative. He's not your assembly member either. Not anymore, at least. He's your senator. I think in large part because Anthony does such a great job of getting around town. People know him and think that he's their everything. I've even seen "Dear Mayor Portantino." No, he's not our mayor either. So we need some education about who our elected officials are as well. But in this big around how we bring this education to All Saints, I first turned to my friend Kristi Lopez, who works for Senator Portantino, who has been my friend and colleague in the work since I started at All Saints, and when her career also started with then Assembly Member Anthony Portantino. So I'll tell you a little bit about Kristi, and then I will also introduce our other speaker, Cathy, Keig, who's a member of the congregation. So Kristi Lopez holds a bachelor's degree in urban planning from Cal State University Northridge. Upon completing her degree, she began working with an environmental nonprofit where she oversaw all volunteer events and taught at-risk youth urban planning. She graduated in 2010 with her master's degree from social work from the University of Southern California, and then began working for Assemblymember Anthony Portantino as a field representative. During her time as field representative, she worked on eradicating issues faced by underserved communities. She assisted with foster care and child care legislation, as well as covered disabilities, special needs, arts, culture, labor, and Latino issues. In 2015, she accepted a position as legislative director for Assemblywoman Christie Lopez, and as legislative director, she oversaw the introduction of 38 bills and had 14 bills signed by the governor, which is quite remarkable. Kristi currently serves and works for Senator Anthony Portantino as a district representative, and her issues include the 710 freeway, foster care youth, homelessness, higher education, and Latino issues. So she will be speaking with us in a moment. And I also want to introduce to you my friend and colleague, somebody that I deeply admire and respect, Cathy, Keig, a member of our community, who has focused her whole career in the political field and is a pro of pros, and contains a lot of wisdom about how the state system works. And so she is going to be setting the tone for our education this morning. So please welcome Cathy Keig to the podium.
Good morning, All Saints. How are you? So nice to be here today. So I'll just do it. And I'll try really hard not to get into trouble. So, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried from time to time. Winston Churchill said that in 1947, but he claims not to have been the author of that. So the little research I did, I couldn't find the author either, so we're going to let Winston have it. But the other thing that we've heard from time to time from Don Rumsfeld to Barack Obama to every other kind of person is that democracy is a very, very messy business. So we have to not let that intimidate us, but let us go forth with that messiness, understanding that it's messy. In a democracy, the power belongs to the people. And we do that in forms of representative government by electing officials from our city council to our state to our federal government. And our experiment includes 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. All of those are equal. All of those are to be treated equal. All of those are what ostensibly provide us with our checks and balances, a concept. So in 2016, I had the privilege and opportunity to go to Iowa for the last 3 weeks of the election cycle. And I had an amazing experience in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I've come to fall in love with the heartland of America as a result of that experience. But I came away from that experience saying to myself, civics, nobody gets the civics part of this. We're not teaching it in schools anymore. We don't understand that it's not just electing people to office, that civics is our rights and duties of citizenship. Or another way of saying it is our privileges and obligations. We all have the privilege of the United States, and we also have the obligation for that. And our citizenry is necessarily occupied with paying the rent, getting kids to school, going to work. We're very, very busy people, and we just sort of take the rest of that for granted to a certain extent. Not necessarily everybody in this room, but it's a generalization of our country right now. And if we don't pay attention to it, we're gonna lose it. I really don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I care that you know who you are and why. I care that you think about what your commitment to your country, to your community, to your family is. And if you don't understand your own values, it's very difficult to understand how you're going to vote. Now, I will admit, more than once in my lifetime have I voted for somebody I couldn't stand. And that's a problem for us. I mean, we have a responsibility to help create candidates that we do support, that we can vote for joyfully. I've also voted very joyfully most of the time, and I have never, ever, ever missed an election, no matter if it's city council or if it's president. And I hope that this community can say the same thing. What can you do? Oh, before I say that part, so the things that I found missing in Iowa was that nobody understands anything. They don't understand the 3 forms of government. They don't understand, they've lost the notion of respect. They've not lost the notion of ethics. They've lost the notion of morals, that these are all fibers of our country and our community, and that we need to hold those up in order to raise the discourse that we're experiencing. And that we need to listen without yelling. The minute we start yelling, we stop hearing. And it's very, very important that we listen, no matter what your point of view is, to talk to other people as well. What can you do? The first and most important thing in my mind is the civics part of it. Your kids, people that aren't your children, talk about what civic responsibility is. Talk about what it means to be a citizen of the United States. Talk to your friends, your neighbors, your families. Conversations, it starts that simply and that early. And if you're so inclined, start demanding that civics go back into the classroom. We've lost civics for a variety of reasons that I won't go into today, but it's a reasonable thing for us to demand as part of our general education. But it goes beyond the classroom. What are you talking about at the dinner table? What are you talking about at Thanksgiving with people that probably do have a different point of view than yours? That's when you bring the voice down and you start listening and finding the commonality between all of you. Please, please, please read the newspaper. Do not rely on Facebook for your news. Do not rely even on Fox or MSNBC. There's many things in between those two. And one of the things that's going to save us, for anybody who feels like we're in trouble right now, is the press and the freedom of the press. Another thing that will help us is the freedom of speech, religion, assembly, things that are guaranteed us in our Constitution. Vote. And take a child with you when you go to the polls. It doesn't have to be your child. It can be any child. So that it becomes part of their expectation, that this is something you're supposed to do. My parents did it for me, and look at me now. I put my life into the political system, and there was an inspiration for me at that very early age. Complacency can end up being our worst enemy. In our baptismal vows, we strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being. Churches have been one of the true forces of change in this country, and we are protected in the Constitution to exercise our religion. Religious institutions were vital in the abolition of slavery. They were the ones that took the ball on civil rights, on internment, on prohibition, even though that got changed, especially for Episcopalians. That would be a problem. Standing against war, standing for nuclear disarmament, and one of our current ones is mass incarceration. So both as a member of the community as well as a member of a religious institution, there's many, many things we can do, and they don't all have to be big. We, in my home just very recently, we had a meeting of our neighborhood on traffic control on our street. And we had 20 people that showed up. Our city councilwoman was there. We're going to be able to make a change in that. And we were then unable to watch the State of the Union, which I still haven't gotten over. So it can be little things and it can be big things. And it starts with you understanding who you are and finding the places where you can start making a difference. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Kristi Lopez, and I work for State Senator Anthony Portantino, and today we're going to talk about the legislative process as it relates to the state. I'll talk a little bit about how it compares to the federal government, but mostly the legislative process and how that works and how you can become involved in that process. I'm going to start by saying that we work for you. Senator Anthony Portantino works for you. Your council people, everyone that you elect works for you. So you are the ones that wield the power and tell us what it is that you need. So I'll start with that. First slide. So we've talked about, we're going to do the legislative process, talk about how you guys can be involved, and then we'll go into a question and answer session. So a little overview. There is kind of an overlap in between the California State Legislature and Congress. Both the federal government and the legislature have two houses, two chambers, a Senate, an Assembly, a Senate, and a House of Representatives. They both have standing policy committees. In the California State Legislature, the Senate has 23, and in the Congress, they have 22. The Assembly has 31, and the Senate has 21. We have 120 members in the California State Legislature, which are made up of 80 Assembly members and 40 senators. In Congress, it's 100 senators and 435 in the House of Representatives. So, if we think about it this way, let's compare California and the United States. The governor, you can think of the governor as kind of like the president of our state. Our lieutenant governor is like the vice president, and their senators are Senate and the House of Representatives and the Assembly members. So let's talk a little bit about the different type of measures. In the Senate and in the Assembly, you have types of measures. You have Senate bills, Assembly bills, Senate constitutional amendments, Senate joint resolutions, Senate concurrent resolutions, and Senate resolutions. And in the Assembly, you have all of the exact same. So the legislative process, what really does that mean? Essentially, it's how we enact laws. It's the process by which we enact laws. It's governed by a 2-year process, and that is governed by statutes. So we go to the US Constitution. So we're told that the budget must be passed by the 15th of June. Who tells us that? The state constitution. We have House rules. For example, in the Assembly, we have a limit. In the Assembly, you have a limit of bills that you can author. You can author 50 in the Assembly and 40 in the Senate. Those are AR 49 and SR 22.5. Joint rules are rules that are both houses agree on those rules, and it's, for example, bill introduction date. This particular year, the bill introduction date is February 17th. Statutes, propositions, this is probably the most important part for y'all to remember, are these specific dates. For now, it's January 19th was the last day that a member or a senator or an assembly member could send bills to Leg Council to be drafted. The last day to introduce them is February 16th. So between those January to February, you should be contacting your legislators and asking them and or telling them the ideas that you have for legislative changes. The budget, January 15th. The last day to pass bills is August 31st, and August 15th is when the governor is his limitation on when he must sign bills. So, where do bills come from? They can come from a constituent, an individual. For example, the senator authored a resolution which was passed that came from an individual that he met at an event. They said, why don't we name the stretch of the 134 between the 2 and the 210 as the Obama Freeway, because he went to Occidental College, he traveled that freeway, and someone came up to him at an event, and he said, you know what, that's a good idea, let's do that. Bills can also come from cities or counties. In this particular case, the senator authored a bill, SB 366, that came from the San Gabriel Council of Governments. Or they can come from a constituent group. In this particular case, it was SB 275, which deals with property taxes for the Caltrans homes. Caltrans tenants, low-income Caltrans tenants, could not afford the property taxes on the bills that they were on the house that they were going to buy. So what we did was make it so that they wouldn't have to pay property taxes on the value of the home, but on the amount that the home was sold for, which came from a town hall that the senator hosted. You can also get bills from your elected official. In this particular case, Anthony authored a bill that had to do with mental health and 5150. In that case, a 5150 is a 72-hour hold for someone who has been dealing with mental health issues. They'll go into a hospital and they'll be there for 72 hours. When the 72 hours is up, one must have a recertification hearing. And in that recertification hearing, it's the doctors and everyone who is helping to serve or to take care of a particular patient. But what happens is the family members aren't notified of that. And in Anthony's particular case, it so happened that the family wasn't notified. This bill would make it so that it would take 36 hours notification would have to be given to a family member so that they are able to go to that recertification hearing and also testify or talk to the doctors and those that are taking care of the patient so that they can give their input. Anthony also got the early start time bill from an LA Times article. We also can get them from staff or from nonprofits. In this case, SB 354 deals with an IEP, the Individualized Education Plan, which would for a monolingual speaking parent would translate that IEP within 30 days. He also actually just authored a bill that would require all schools to put the suicide hotline number on the back of student IDs. I will make sure to tell him that you said thank you. So I have an idea. Where do I start with that idea? You can present the bill to the member directly. You can arrange for a meeting with his staff. You can drop it off at the district office. You can call or email, or you can speak to the member or staff when you see them out in the community. So, your idea is fabulous. We want to start school no later than 8:30. When that happens, we take the idea, Capitol staff will then research that idea between September to December. So if you have an idea that you would like to have him consider, start thinking about what that looks like in August and then present it in September, and from September to December, staff will research that bill. Then we'll take it to Leg Council. Leg Council will then draft the bill, and then the member will then cross the bill. So this is actually probably the most important part When a bill is introduced, it needs to sit in print for 31 days. Those 31 days is the opportunity that you have to view, comment, and research the bill and figure out how it affects you or how it affects the population that you serve. You can write a letter, you can call, you can meet, you can email, or you can drop it off to the district office. Remember that we work for you. We want to hear what you have to say about a particular bill or issue that is going on. I highlighted fact sheet because you can call an office if you just hear on the news that there's a bill that is going to do X, Y, Z. Call the office of that author and say, hey, can you give me a fact sheet for what that is? It's a one-pager that tells you everything that you need to know about that bill. So after we've done all of that, the Rules Committee, when the bill is crossed, it goes to the Rules Committee. Rules Committee is the one that is in charge of dictating which policy committee that bill is going to go to. Again, this is also still your time to be able to view comments, support or opposition to the bill. Tell us what is good or bad about the bill and why. Very simple. Call, email, drop by the district staff, come talk to us at an event. Talk to the member when you see him out in the community. Once the bill goes to policy committee, it's set for a hearing. This is when testimony is given and discussion is had on the bill. Those that go to committee, and this is actually something also important, you guys can go up to Sacramento and testify in support or opposition of any bill. If the senator, if you have a particular position on a specific bill and you want to go to Sacramento, you can go to Sacramento and say, hi, my name is, and I live in such and such city, and I am in opposition or support of this bill for X, Y, Z. Normally at committee hearings, you'll have experts, lobbyists, members of the community, anyone affected by that issue testify in support or opposition. Members will then ask questions and they'll vote to either pass the bill or not pass the bill. We talked about the IEP bill. The IEP bill went to the Senate Education Committee. So a policy committee will send the bill to the germane topic. So for an IEP bill, or the Individualized Education Plan, deals with schools, so it of course went to the Education Committee. It was heard on April 19th. So, results of a committee. The bill can either fail, which nobody wants, or it can pass with amendments or without amendments. With respect to the Individualized Education Plan bill, which requires that school district translates IEP within 30 days, passed on a 7-0. If it doesn't pass, you can ask for reconsideration of that bill. Or you can hold the bill in committee because there's more work to be done because it's not quite fully cooked, and you can make it a 2-year bill. After it leaves policy committee, it goes to the fiscal committee. The fiscal committee is the appropriations committee, and that's where they decide how much the bill is going to cost. And that's where you have to work, and the senator has to work with the appropriations chair to decide what we need to skim or trim from the bill to ensure that it costs a little bit less. Fiscal impact and the results of a hearing. Normally, amendments are taken in the appropriations committee. Those amendments will dictate whether or not it costs less or doesn't cost less. Once, hopefully, fingers crossed, it leaves Appropriations Committee and it'll go to the floor. When it's on the floor, that's when senators will debate whether or not one thing or the other. In the case of SB 328, which is the don't start school any earlier than 8:30, the conversation was really kind of about like peer-reviewed science and local control. School boards are not in favor of it because they say, we are the school district, we know exactly what is appropriate for our students. But there have been numerous studies done that state that if a child can just sleep a little bit later, it reduces obesity, it reduces car accidents, it increases academic performance. And that was the discussion that happened on the floor. Votes. So in the Senate, a majority vote would be 21 because we have 40 members. In the case of the school start time bill, it was 25 yeses, 13 noes, and then 2 members did not vote. Once it passes the Senate, it goes and does the exact same process in the Assembly. So it leaves one house, goes to another house, and everything that I just talked about happens all over again. After it leaves the floor and the other house, if you're lucky, it'll go to enrollment. Enrollment is just kind of the process by which we make sure that the bill is written correctly. At that time, this is where you guys, again, this is where you can come in. When a bill goes to the governor, you can still call the governor and say, I'm in support or opposition of this bill. Remember that you wield the power. If you can get 100 people, 200, 300, or just 2, or just 1, call, it makes a difference. It really makes a difference at this point. Then the governor has 12 days to sign it. If he doesn't sign it, it goes into law, or he can veto it. And then it's chaptered by the Secretary of State. So, I've said remember a lot because I really, really want you guys to remember. Remember, Senator Portantino and electeds work for you. My salary that's paying me right now to talk to you is because I work for you. Senator works for you, and all of your electeds work for you. Inform him of issues that are important to you, no matter what that is. Let him know, let him or her know. Speak to staff and community, meet with the senator, email, phone call, postcards. And I'm going to bring up an example. In Claremont, I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the Gold Line extension. So the Gold Line is going to be extending out to Montclair. There is a Metrolink station in Claremont. The Metrolink and the Gold Line were going to go to that station, and there was some talk about closing down the Metrolink station, period. For those that live in Claremont that take the Metrolink into downtown, they were going to shut down the station. They were going to close the station. Close the station. I went to one community meeting with over 200 residents of Claremont and the surrounding areas. It was a town hall. They had Metrolink, the Gold Line Authority, and others. The point is, 200 people came and all of them voiced their opinion. Can you guess what the result was of them voting whether or not to keep or not keep that station? Anybody? Did they keep it? Who wields the power? I'm just saying. So, stay up to date on current issues. Read newspapers, watch the news, talk to your friends. Let us know what is important to you. For Anthony, education is a really big thing, both K through 12 and post-secondary. That's one of his issues. What you guys can do is get together with like-minded people. Write letters, make phone calls, host community meetings on topics that are important to you. Do you think that the Claremont station would not still be there if they didn't all get together and have one meeting amongst like-minded people that led to a 200 people town hall, which then led to them keeping the station? If people didn't talk to each other and meet, who wields the power? So, housekeeping. These are the committees that Anthony sits on. I think the most proud one that he is the Budget Fiscal Review Committee Sub 1 on Education and Finance, which means that all of the money for education hits his subcommittee before it goes to the full budget, and then all the others. The bill package that you can't really read, but there are like 29 bills in there that are, you can see, well, you can't really see them, but they're all there. So, questions, or I'll be back.
All right, so that was a great crash course, and I know it was a lot. Yes, thank you, Kristi. And I know that this isn't the most sexy of topics, except for as like political geeks out there, but it's so essential that we understand the process. And in large part, if you pay attention to what our action is every week, we are making our voices heard at either the federal, state, or local level each and every single week at some point in these processes, and it depends on the bill that we're taking action on. So sometimes we are propositioning our position to members of a committee because we're concerned that it may not get out of committee, and it's most urgent that our voice is heard at that committee point in the process. Sometimes it's made its way with a breeze through committee process, policy committee process, and it's at a floor vote, either in the Senate or the Assembly, and then it is urgent for us to have impact at that floor vote point in the process. And sometimes these bills are making their way to the governor's desk, and we need to urge the governor to either veto or support this bill, and then we're rushing the governor with our letters. So pay close attention to our weekly actions. We are hitting these two forms of government, or all forms of government, at various points in the process, and it's the job of the rapid response team to discern what is the most critical point of impact for our congregation, to be putting our faith into action and making our voices heard. So please pay attention to that. And I do want to draw an example of where our voice was heard, and it was incredibly powerful. There was a foster care bill several years ago, and Jeanette Mann will probably remember this. She's our volunteer working the action table today, and also an active leader in the foster care project ministry. We made our voices heard by sending letters to then Governor Schwarzenegger in support of this foster care bill, which would have extended foster care benefits to foster care youth beyond what was the previous legal age, which was 18, and I think it extended it, Kristi, to 22, 21, 22. 23, thank you, fantastic, 23. We sent in over 350 letters of support to the governor. Governor Schwarzenegger, please sign this bill into law. We sent them. They made their way to Sacramento. A couple days later, I get a phone call from a staffer from the governor's office saying, we received about 500 letters of support for this bill. 350 plus of them came from All Saints Church. We figure you should be at the bill signing. Right? The governor was going to sign the bill into law. He wanted us at the bill signing. All this to say, our voice matters, and they pay attention, whether it's 2, 5, 10, 100, 300. Our voices really do make a difference, and so I strongly encourage you to take all this information in, know what role you're playing in the process, and at the very least, participate in our action on a weekly basis. But as Kristi and Cathy mentioned, be educated on your own and take action on your own. A couple resources that I want to let you know about before we open it up to questions for both Kristi and Cathy. Kristi provided us with these fabulous color copies of How a Bill Becomes a Law. So this is a tool for you to take today because we sort of did our crash course in about 15 minutes. You can take this with you and know it for forever. There is also this more extensive version of the legislative process where you open it up, and it also has the map of how a bill becomes a law. It lays it out in beautiful steps. It has Anthony Portantino's contact information, so you can give him your idea. So please take one of those. And then also at the action table, both this week and whenever, we want to encourage you to fill out this My Representatives card. You need to know who your elected officials are. Do not count on volunteers from the action table to fill in your elected official. Your action is not complete unless you know who you're sending that letter to, okay? So the best way to do that, fill out My Representatives card. We already filled in the essentials for you, like our president is that person. Our senators are Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris. You need to fill in who your House of Representative is, who your state senator is, and who your state assembly member is. So fill that in today if you haven't done so. You can take a picture of this, keep it on your phone so you never forget if you lose your little card. Know who your elected officials are. Okay, that's it. Cathy, yes, please. And then we're gonna open it up to some questions for about 5 minutes or so.
And so you may be wondering how you figure out who your person is. If you go to the LA County Registrar website and put in your address, it will come up what district you're in. You may have to then do a further step of research. So let's say you live in Congressional District 25, then you have to go to the congressional roster and figure out what California Congressional District 25 is. If you're in Assembly District 18, then you have to go to the Assembly roster. So it takes a little bit of work, but once you have it and you fill out your little card, it won't change until the next election.
And we have volunteers ready to help you because we have notebooks where we can, by zip code, look up your officials and then give you the names on the spot, if that's helpful too. Okay, question over here. And Kristi and Cathy, if I can invite you to come up so you can help.
Okay. This is Bob Antal. This is a question for the group. We talked about Senator Portantino and his reporting to the people and working for the people. And I get that, I believe that, great. Let's talk about Washington for a minute. We've got 535 representatives in Washington. Most of them are reporting to special interests and are reporting to their party before they report to the people. And I think that's fairly evident when you look at the polls on things like gun control, et cetera. What are we going to do about that, and how are we going to change basically money in politics and get back to the people in Washington reporting to the people?
I think my sentiment is going to still be the same. You wield the power. It doesn't, I can't speak to the federal government because I'm not there, but you wield the power. You and 5, 10, 15, 20, 1,000 people need to let your congressional representative know how you feel about something. They work for you. So just keep calling, keep emailing, keep doing what you need to do. And in this particular case, it would be you calling or emailing. You have to understand that they work for you. They work for you.
Jeanette, we can't hear you without a microphone.
Okay, there are 5 Republicans in Orange County that have been targeted to turn over from Republicans to Democrats. And there have been groups of people going down there. No, let me just tell you.
We need to get you on the live stream. Thank you.
Okay, there have been groups of people going down to those areas, registering voters, polling, not registering voters, knocking on doors, polling. 3 of those Republicans representatives have announced that they are not running for re-election.
Yeah.
So that's another thing you can do. You can go take the action one step further. That's how you're going to change what's happening in Congress.
Okay, just one more question because we're at 11. So, Marianne, yes.
I think this is for Cathy, but it might be for both. Thank you both very much for coming. So, Cathy, you said we need to bring up candidates. We need to raise up candidates. How do we do that?
You know anybody? So, one of the things that happened as a result of the #MeToo movement was a lot of women became empowered to believe that they actually could run for office. I think that one of the things when I talked about how we are disengaged from our civic responsibility because of how hectic our lives are, the things we need to do to keep our lives going, that it dawned on people that I'm just like them. We're all just people, but it's our government. It belongs to us, as Christie says. So the way to do that is to look at your situation, to look at your geography in essence, and the people that you know who have taken positions in. Okay, I'm getting myself all ahead of myself. You raise up people to run for office by the flame in yourself. That first of all, it's like, maybe I can do that. And then you start talking to other people who may be supportive of you doing that. Or if there are people in your life that you say to yourself, why isn't that person running for office? In California, it's very difficult because everything's so big. And there's a lot of entrenchment in California. And there's lots of places to start: school boards, city councils, water boards. I mean, there's all kinds of places to do it. So part of it is, what are your values? What do you want to do? Is that something that's attractive to you? And what about the people in your life that may also be attracted to it? The state of Virginia was an amazing accomplishment because people decided they needed to take their power back.
So that's all we have time for. Thank you for being here. Know that this is just going to be the beginning of our ongoing education around our role in government. do not forget, it is our moral responsibility to be participants in this process. Again, each week we put our faith into action. Let's do that together every single week, but also be encouraged about doing it on your own. Thank you for being here.